If you have the Sonos Arc or you have the Sonos Beam and you want to know what products to buy next or how to upgrade your system, this is the video for you. I'm going to go over the entire Sonos ecosystem right now. What's up, I'm B the Installer, and I've been around Sonos products for many years, and from my installation background I can tell you that it makes it quite difficult to put speakers throughout people's houses when you're either not willing to pay for the wiring installation or you have some speakers in some rooms and some rooms are empty. But Sonos and other companies have made it quite easy to break into the whole home audio. And what was once a rich man's game is now, well, it's still pretty expensive, but at least you can break into it for as low as $200 with some of their basic speakers. So I guess it's easier, and wireless audio is just in higher demand. In this video, I'm gonna go over all the products: the Sonos Arc, Sonos Beam, the Amp, the Fives, and the Sonos Sub Gen 3. And a majority of the video is going to be comparing these different items that people ask me about, whether it's the One SLs versus the Fives, or whether it's the Fives versus the new Sub Gen 3, or it's the Amp versus some of these other surrounds. And even the possibility of having two subs now. What? And yeah, that sounds crazy, but once you buy Sonos, you keep buying Sonos. And I'm here to make it easier. And that's a good thing. Well, maybe it's a bad thing. I'm sure I'm gonna get some angry spouse comments. So before I get to the Sonos Arc and how to expand your system, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. There's already a lot of videos on TVs and home theater from a practical standpoint, and definitely ring the bell to be notified when I upload a new one. And while you're down there, smash the like button so YouTube knows you like the video and other people can check it out. So the most recent soundbar additions to the Sonos ecosystem are the Sonos Beam and the Sonos Arc. Both are great because they have the HDMI connectivity, and that gives you a bit of an advantage over the older but great Sonos Playbar. And while I wouldn't necessarily call it an upgrade going from the Sonos Playbar to the Sonos Beam just for that HDMI connection, seeing as how the Playbar is a very good speaker, I would call it an upgrade to go from the Playbar to the Arc, because it has more speakers, more power, and the HDMI Arc so that you can get the upward firing Dolby Atmos speakers. And besides the size and the cost, there are a lot of other differences between these two soundbars, and I would recommend them for different areas of the house. So the Sonos Beam is 5 channels and it's about $400, and I really would recommend this for a bedroom or an office. And the Sonos Beam is especially good for those who already have Sonos speakers and really just want to add a little bit more volume to their bedroom TV or to another TV, but not really get all into the ecosystem. Now, of course, you can expand, put a sub, put rear speakers in there, but the Sonos Beam is probably not where I would start with that. The Sonos Arc, on the other hand, is a really great speaker and probably the one that I would start with if I was starting fresh with Sonos. Now, it is $800 and it gets more expensive from there, but if you're gonna start buying Sonos, this is the product that you really need to buy. If you have a medium or large size living room or a 65-inch TV or larger, that's what makes the Sonos Arc a very popular product. The Sonos Arc also has 11 channels with upward firing Dolby Atmos speakers, making it the most dynamic speaker that Sonos has ever made. And Sonos actually offers a new SL version of the Arc, mostly sold at Costco, which is a little less expensive, and the SL stands for speechless, so basically this is a Sonos Arc without a microphone. So everyone wearing a tinfoil hat that doesn't want the government knowing where you're going this weekend can get that one at Costco. No, I'm just kidding. The microphone can actually be quite annoying, and it actually kills the sound from the Sonos Arc for about 4 seconds every time someone says their name. And with 10 different smart assistant enabled devices in this house, someone's always making it go off, so we actually had to disengage the microphone. And as I said in my previous video, the Sonos Arc is a very good speaker as a standalone, but it can only do so much by itself. I'll leave the link below for that video. Definitely check it out after this one. But in this video, I'm gonna start from scratch and kind of give you comparisons to figure out which products to buy next and which ones will give you the most dramatic impact. So Sonos recommends on their website to buy the Sonos Arc with the Sub Gen 3 and 2 of the Sonos One SLs. And for most rooms, that's plenty of power and it sounds fantastic. But I get a lot of questions about which one of those 2 things is most important to add to the Sonos Arc first. And for most people, it's gonna be the Sub Gen 3. The Sonos Sub Gen 3 really dramatically changes the Sonos Arc system. Now, the Sub Gen 3 is basically the same as the Sub Gen 2. It has a little better tech in it and it gets slightly lower response, but I wouldn't necessarily go out and buy a Sub Gen 3 when you have a Sub Gen 2, unless you're gonna get 2 of them, but I sure would want one of them with the Sonos Arc or the Sonos Beam. Now, in addition to the sub, you can get surround speakers. And again, the Sonos One SL are the preferred speakers for this, or at least that's what Sonos says. And again, the SL means it does not have a microphone, but it does add to the system. Not quite as much as the Sub, because the Sonos Arc already is a 5.1.2 without the surround sound speakers. But it definitely is better with the surrounds taking over the surround responsibility, especially if you have an odd-shaped room like us, where the left side of the room is open and that left speaker has to fire down the side of the room and back up to hit us on the couch. And the One SLs are even better for music. You can choose full or ambient mode. And when you put it in full mode, it basically doubles the sound that's produced from this system. But remember, you can't take these SLs out of the room and play them in different rooms independent of the Arc system, because it's tied to the room. So you actually have to disconnect it from the software and remove it from the entire Arc system. So it's something you're not going to want to do on a day in and day out basis, and something that I actually learned the hard way too. So those One SLs are sticking to the Arc, and that's your 5.1.2 setup. So now what? Now we can get into the questions that I get asked most about this system. First, let's talk about the Sonos 5 as surround speakers. When I got this question for the first time, even I was like, ooh, that's a good idea. And then I had people asking me if they should get 5s or a Sub. And so now I'm like, well, we got to test this out and figure out what's best for people. But I'm going to warn you, there are reasons not to get the Sonos 5 speakers, and I'll tell you about that. So I got a couple of Sonos 5s, and this is a great speaker independently. I mean, of course it has 6 drivers in them, so I don't know where they got the name from, but the Sonos 5 is almost identical to the Play 5 with, again, a bit of an improved technology, but basically the same. But the 5s have no microphones. There is no option to get one with a microphone. But if you do take one of the SL speakers into a different room, you can just use it with an Echo Dot, or you can pair it with a speaker that does have a microphone, like a One and a One SL. That will work as a stereo system in another room. So food for thought. You can find more information about the Sonos 5, but should you use it with the Sonos Arc? And the answer is maybe. It's a tough call actually. So when testing it with my system, I found the Sonos 5s to be amazing with music. It basically triples your Sonos Arc with music when you have the surround set to full mode versus ambient. The pair of 5s easily overpowers the Sonos Arc. It actually ended up feeling like the surrounds were the fronts and the Arc was the surround. But in ambient mode, there's not much different than the Sonos ones, and that's by design. But there's no way you'd want the Sonos 5s for ambient music. You must put them in full mode, or else why would you want them? But for watching movies, the Sonos 5s require a big room, which many people have. I've set them up in pretty large rooms and it fills the space with very quality sound. But you gotta get them away from the listener to make that worth the cost. I have these set up about 8 feet apart, and I can tell you it's a bit of an overkill. I actually really enjoy watching the race scene from Ready Player One with systems like this because of how the sound is designed. And when I had the Sonos Arc with the Sonos 5 in place, it felt sort of all or nothing at high volume. You don't notice much of a difference, and then all of a sudden, King Kong is screaming in your ear. It was pretty intense, maybe a little too intense. And I didn't feel like the addition of the 5s in a medium-sized room was warranted for movies, because it's just overwhelmed the room. So the natural thing would be to lower them, which I did, and it brought it back to being very similar to the Sonos One SLs. But with the Sonos 5s in place, instead of the SLs, there was definitely more bass, there was more sound, and it was just generally better than having the Arc and SLs without the Sub for sure. But it just didn't have that super low frequency that the Sub Gen 3 can create. And the Sub is just more impactful on the system than 2 of the Sonos 5s. But I don't think a lot of people are just thinking of getting the Sonos Arc in 5s for surrounds versus the Sonos Arc in just a Sub, because the Sonos Arc in 5s is the same price as the entire system that I was speaking about before. But let's hold that thought, because I'm actually going to get into some comparisons in a second, but let's consider the other options that you can get for surround speakers, and that's using the Sonos Amp with existing speakers. Some people have asked me what to do if they already have in-ceiling or wall-mounted surround speaker, and the Sonos Amp has been the solution. The new Sonos Amp is more than twice as powerful as the old Connect Amp, and that's 250 watts for a pair of speakers. And you can tell it has that juice. I've actually compared the Sonos Connect amp and this amp, as well as a Sonance 12-channel amp that puts out 50 watts per channel, all in the same massive house with really nice B&W in-ceiling speakers. And the new amp is massively powerful. It does come with a hefty price tag of $649, but it also has the HDMI ARC port and a sub out. So it's a dynamic piece of Sonos gear, and I use it often with my clients. So if you need something to power a great pair of speakers anywhere in the house, the Sonos Amp is fantastic. And it's great for surround speakers as well. But for me, just for bookshelf speakers, I didn't find it any easier, especially since I don't have speakers to put in place. So now let's get into some decision making and really talk about how to maximize this system. So in a small room, I definitely recommend the Sonos Arc. I think it's the winner for best soundbar under $1,000. it's a very dynamic speaker, and with something like the Sonos SASB1 soundbar mount, or just a wall mount, you can get killer sound for your eARC enabled TV for just $7.99. And if I had to make a next move, then I'd ask you, how big is the room and who's asking? For most people, the next move is to buy the Sonos Sub Gen 3. It's the most dramatic addition to the Sonos Arc or even the Sonos Beam. It completely fills out the sound you should be hearing when watching movies or listening to music. Unfortunately, without a sub, the Sonos Arc is just missing a little in depth. And it's just physics. The Arc can't get that low with its shape and power. Most soundbars can't. Now, if someone has a large room and is open to paying $2,000 for this system, you have basically two options. You can either buy the Sonos Arc, the SLs, and the Sub Gen 3, or you can buy the Sonos Arc and two Sonos Fives. Both of those come in at just under $2,000. This is probably the second hardest choice to make. The hardest one's yet to come. But if you have a large space and you don't care as much about crushing bass, the Sonos Arc and two of the Sonos Fives are going to give you the most sound volume. They just get louder than any other option at this price. The Fives are just really good and produce a lot of quality sound, especially with music. But if you want the best option for a home theater and you want to get that deep bass, then it's clear the Sonos Arc, the Sub Gen 3, and the One SLs is the way to go. The Sonos Fives don't get that low-end bass that the Sub does, and the One SLs produce enough ambient noise anyways that I wouldn't upgrade them in lieu of the Sub from a home theater. They also don't punch you in the ear during a movie. They produce just enough ambient noise when watching a movie in a large or a small room, and I just don't think you'd feel as bad about lowering the volume on these as they cost 40% of what the Sonos Fives do. But what if you want more? Well, getting the Sub Gen 3 and the Play 5 sounds like a great solution, but is that the best way to spend your money? And this brings me to the most complicated question of all. How do you max out this Sonos Arc system? Up until recently, you could only take out the SLs and put in the Sonos Fives and have one sub, but now you can actually pair two subs in the same system. The only caveat is if you're gonna have two subs, one of them has to be the Sub Gen 3. So you can either do two Sub Gen 3s or you can have a Sub Gen 2 and a Sub Gen 3. So now we have to work this problem all the way out. I mean, if someone really likes Sonos and has the money, would you rather get the Sonos Arc, the Sonos Fives, and one sub coming in at about $1,500? Or would you opt for the Sonos Arc, keep the One SLs, and get two subs? It's about $2,550. So I know this is kind of an extreme situation, but it really comes down to the size of the room, the preference of the person that's watching it, and kind of what you're gonna be watching. Because some people, like I said, are gonna go for the bass and not necessarily care about the volume of sound that they're going to get. And some people are going to be on the other side where the bass isn't that important to them. They're still going to get great bass with one sub, but having the Sonos Fives is going to be very loud and give you just a ton of volume in your room. Luckily, my room is smaller and the Fives are just too close. So I would opt to put a sub on each side of the couch and keep the One SLs, as they're just fine for us when it comes to surround sound. And to be honest, we don't listen to that much whole home audio currently, so the Sonos Arc and the SLs are great for us. But I'm sure there's a lot of people with large living rooms that would like to space out the Sonos Fives and still have one sub to produce the bottom end bass and get you a lot more volume throughout that room. But wait, was that really maxing out the system? For those of you who caught that, why not just keep it all, right? So to max this system out, you can actually have the Sonos Arc, two of the Sonos Fives, and two of the Sonos Sub Gen 3s. It's actually kind of hard to say that. And for those 5 items, you're actually looking at just under $3,200. Wow, that's a lot of money. And that's what I have in this room right now. And wow, it's a lot of sound. Sonos is not messing around with these products. I was playing music at almost full volume, and you can pretty much hear it all the way down the street and in the backyard, and our house couldn't contain that much power. So if you're looking for the ultimate Sonos home theater, now you can get 2 of the subs included and use the Sonos Fives as surround sounds. For most of us, that's quite crazy, but you know, we have to know what's out there, right? But I do have 2 pieces of information for anyone considering any of this, really. The first thing is that if you're buying any of this Sonos products, I would definitely take the opportunity to try to find some of this open box or refurbished, because Sonos products hold their value quite well, but you can find a lot of these things returned because people don't really understand the technology. And I've actually bought a lot of these products open boxed over the year. Both of these Sonos 5 are actually open box items. Both of them are in perfect shape, and I got over 30% off the retail price. That is the way to buy electronics. You have to find deals. And the other advice, or really just my gut feeling, is that Sonos plays the long game, so you can start with just buying the Arc and go from there. About a year ago, Sonos sent out a questionnaire asking people if they wanted Atmos upward firing speakers. And I mean, obviously the answer is yes, but they made the Sonos Arc and it's a huge hit. So I fully expect Sonos to make upward firing rear speakers and expand this system so you could have maybe a 7.2.2 system or a 9.2.4 system. So, you know, buy the Arc now and be ready for when they upgrade later, because it really is a great soundbar and you can't get a whole lot better for $800 or less. And definitely let me know in the comments what you guys plan to buy, or if you have these products. I want to get some feedback, so definitely hit me up in the comments, ask questions, let me know what you guys need. Subscribe to get more videos like this, ring the notification bell to know when I upload a new video, and just like that, you can be the installer.